Another day, another budget guitar. Let's talk about it. This is the Donner DMT-100. I got this guitar primarily because I wanted a beater guitar that didn't sound half bad and didn't look half bad, was also not too heavy on the pocket. I kind of wanted it so I could take it to like practice and not hurt my back. And I was browsing the internet as one does for guitars, and this caught my eye for two really superficial reasons. Number one was I love guitars with a clean look, and you can't deny that this is an exceptionally clean look. I love the matte white finish. It really accentuates that aesthetic. Love that. You don't see a lot of guitars in matte white. And I'm a sucker for headstocks like this. I mean, you gotta admit, this is like the perfect balance between pointy and rounded and also small. And it just fits that criteria. It's that maleness, carven kind of a feel. And I love that headstock design. So in my head, I was like, Donner is not an ill-reputed company. I've seen so many prominent YouTubers that I respect say that these guitars are worth the buy because even if you don't like the electronics, you have a decent husk of an instrument, and you can throw in your other parts that are lying around or whatever and get a playable instrument. So I bit the bullet. I made an offer on Reverb, and I actually got this for, I believe, 150, which on the surface seems like a killer deal. But is it? Or rather, was it? Because I have this guitar in my hands now. So I'm going to quickly go over the things that I love about this first. I did go over the looks. So looker, I love the fact that they, with zero shame, copied the Hipshot style hardtail bridge, which is my favorite hardtail bridge because of the way it sits in this little cradle over here. It's super comfortable on the right hand. It doesn't get caught on anything. It's just, I love how that feels. So it is made of cheap pot metal, as you might expect. You can see the bubbling on the surface if you look really close, but looks good from a distance and it feels good, so I'll give it a pass. I love the fact that this is a light guitar, maybe 6 pounds on a bad day, but yeah, this is probably the second lightest guitar I own. The lightest one being a headless guitar. So as far as regular guitar goes, this is the lightest one. It's not gonna hurt my back at all. And unfortunately, that is where the things I love about it kind of end. The neck, how does the neck feel? It feels like a thin Fender Strat neck. Now for some of you, that might be a neck that you love playing. For me, I'm about it. It's not my favorite neck, but I'll live with it. I'm comfortable with it. I can play on it for sure. So it's on the website, it says this is a 9.5 inch radius, which kind of makes sense, which is why I said it felt like a thin Fender neck, because even though the radius is 9.5, the width is thinner, but it's not Ibanez thin. Okay, so let's not get too crazy here. But it does feel like a thin Fender neck, which is fine, which is comfortable for me, and you can shred on it for days. Another good thing is that the finish on the back is a satin finish, which is great. It feels great. It's the same finish as you have on the rest of the body, by the way. So consistent theme throughout. Okay. Now, what are the things I don't really like about this guitar? Well, where do I start? I'm going to start from the basics, okay? It doesn't make sense to advertise this as a beginner guitar if you would potentially have to spend the same amount of money that you spent on purchasing the guitar on a tech to get it set up properly. I'm not a beginner. I've been fiddling with guitars for a long time, so I can deal with the setup and that headache, but you're advertising this guitar towards beginners, and beginners are not going to know all this shit, right? Setting up a guitar like this would easily run you 100 to 150 with any good tech off repute, okay? I'm going to start with the nut. So this nut is advertised as a bone nut. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that, to be honest. But what I will say is that it doesn't feel like a plastic nut because it felt kind of soft. And the reason I know it felt soft is because I had to file it a little bit. Why did I have to file it? Because it wouldn't accept strings, especially on the lower register, of gauges any more than the nines it came with. And I kind of wanted to get this guitar set up in B standard or drop A and keep it, which is not unheard of for a 25.5 guitar. So, which is the scaling, the Fender scaling. So I did have to kind of file it a little bit so this 12 to 54 set fit. So it fits now, and the nut height isn't bad, but Jesus Christ, was it cut atrociously. Like, I had to put some work into this, guys. Like, cutting a nut is no joke. It requires patience and it requires practice, not something a beginner is going to have. So don't advertise this guitar to beginners if they have to get the nut worked on. That's very basic, right? The frets, they come looking super polished. But that's kind of throwing sand at your eyes, because just because the frets look polished doesn't mean that they're set up properly. I don't give a fuck about that. I want the fret heights to be right. I don't want dead spots everywhere, right? When this guitar came, the neck was bowed in a convex manner. So it had a bow that was like this. Obviously, I'm exaggerating it, but the bow was in this area. So immediately I had to do a truss rod adjustment. And getting the truss rod out, I had a friend helping me out, and it was a headache because the screw was angled in. Somebody did a really sloppy job. So once I got it out, I was like, fuck that, I'm not putting it back in again. And then it required several turns for me to make the neck straight enough. And then the dead spot started all over. It's not even a joke. Like, it's not even funny. Like, I had to, obviously, I'm not complaining about the fact that I had to adjust the saddle heights, because you have to do that if you're putting heavier gauge strings and you're lowering the tuning, which I'll live with that. But the intonation just doesn't seem to be right. And the dead spots were all over. I got rid of most of them. Get the Stumac rubbers, the fret rubbers. They're amazing. So I did use them, and I got rid of 90% of the spots, but I still have some over here. Now, this band I'm playing with uses gain like nobody else's business. So they're not going to be that audible, but it still really bugs me because a beginner shouldn't have to deal with dead spots this bad, right? Now, I did mention the fact that I had to adjust the heights again, which was fine. So that's the experience I had with the initial setup. It's not a setup that a beginner can do so easily, okay? Now, the electronics, they're scratchy as hell. Even when I have the electronics off all the way, but the amp is on, it's scratchy, scratch galore. Drives me nuts, which is why I have the amp on standby at the moment, because I don't want that sound to interfere with my voice. So that's something a beginner has to look forward to dealing with. Now, a lot of these demos, quote unquote demos, you'll see is YouTubers buying guitars like this and playing it through a $2,000 Mesa rig, which doesn't make any sense because the demographic this is geared towards is people who have Line 6 Spiders, maybe a Boss Katana on a good day in their spare bedroom, which is my situation. So I am going to be playing this through a Boss Katana for a brief sound demo. I'm not going to be spending too much time on that. But let me tell you that these pickups, again, this is advertised as a modern metal guitar, but these pickups are not geared towards that. They're kind of mushy sounding. Like, you can have cheap pickups that get the job done, right? I have seen that. Even Ibanez stock pickups do a better job. But these pickups are kind of higher in the mid-range, and they have this kind of muffled sound, and you have to kind of play around with the EQ a little bit. So it's not really a plug-and-play guitar for a beginner. Okay, so the tuners, it doesn't hold tuning that well, to be honest with you. Again, I know I have higher gauge strings on this, but it had the same problem with the lighter gauge strings, and I guess you have to take my word for it. It has a pretty unique problem where if I'm chugging with palm mutes, then it's mostly fine. But if I'm hitting the open E string, then the pitch seems to wobble a lot, almost like I'm bending below the nut. It wobbles like crazy, and you can tell that it's getting detuned, which is super, super frustrating. The way I have it set up now is it's kind of somewhere between 2mm and 2.5, which I'm okay with. That's definitely a very playable action. So the playability is good, but as far as the tuning and intonation issues goes, that's something you'll have to deal with. So this is what the bridge pickup sounds like in a very, very high gain setting, which is what I'll be using it for. You see that the G string has already gone out of tune. I tuned it up right before I started recording the video, and I hadn't played a single note, and I had stretched out the strings. This string set is like 2 weeks old. So this is one of the things you have to look forward to with this guitar. Isn't that nice? And so that's what it sounds like. Again, I guess that's a usable sound, you know, high gain, grindcore, whatever, it doesn't really matter all that much. If you put a noise suppressor or something like that, noise gate, you can tighten up the sound a whole lot, which is what I'm going to end up doing. But yeah, as far as the tuning issue I was talking about with the E string, this is what I'm talking about. This is me just chugging. It's fine, right? But if I do this, you see how much it moves around. Like I expect it to move around a little bit, but this is a large movement. It's almost like I'm doing this. So yeah, I guess I could go up a string gauge. I could put 13s on this. I don't really like 13s, but if that's what I have to do, that's what I have to do. I've played in drop A on Gibson scale guitars with this gauge with absolutely no problems. So I refuse to accept the explanation that this is a string gauge issue or something like that. It's really not. It's something else. I'll have to put more time and find out what it is. But yeah, but that was a brief sound demo of the bridge pickup, the neck pickup. Again, I'm not really going to use it, but for the sake of the video. E string is out of tune. So yeah, I'm gonna work a little bit more on this guitar. Hopefully I can salvage it. I really want to salvage it. If not, it's gonna be sayonara. So peace.